when you're on Oprah, to me, that was my point. I'm like, then I'll feel like you're like, this big star or whatever. And then
this is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
No, I mean, he was such a great dad. I mean, so I honestly did not think of it. When I was little, I was upset. Yeah, I was,
well, you really didn't know better at that point.
Yeah, I was young and whatever. But even when I was younger and I played, I used to play softball and I was a cheerleader. He was never at any of the games to watch me. I mean, my son wrestles. I wouldn't even think of missing, I'd be like, all right, I'm leaving. My son's wrestling. I'm going,
That was the one thing I always promised myself. I mean, Mike, you were very fortunate because you lived in the town you worked. That was one of the things that I always promised myself with my kids, that I'm going to be that father who's there. Unfortunately, I missed one of my son's baseball games tonight. But,
I always said, my parents were divorced when I was 7 years old, and my father never missed one of my sporting events until I got to college.
Yeah.
Never. He was at everything.
Because they remember that. Yeah. The kids see that stuff.
Of course.
And, thankfully you had the wherewithal to overcome it and understand a little bit. But I'm sure there's plenty of times your father came home dog-tired. And I don't know anybody who's been around somebody who's baked all day. They come home, they stink.
They do. He had such a smell to him. I could still smell it to this day. I could close my eyes and smell it. He had an odor to him.
Well, it's funny when you walk past a bakery and you get that smell. You're like, oh, it smells so. But when you smell like it 24 hours a day, it's like.
And people in the back are probably just gagging at this stuff.
And when you're it's like when you're cooking, for a holiday, it's the same thing. You're exhausted. I understand it now because I'm a mom, and there's days where I'm tired and you're just exhausted. Now I understand it, and I think that even our kids, if they don't understand it, when someday they're gonna understand it, when they're a mom or they're a dad, they'll get it. They'll be like, oh my God, I get it.
Really, isn't that preparing for your future?
Exactly.
What your father did?
Exactly.
He did all that so you could have You could have more.
So I get it.
Was there ever a time in the history of Carlo's Bakery, because you were of age where you saw it all, where it almost didn't work? Or was he just the best?
No, he was just the best.
He was just, he had that talent.
Always. He was just the best.
I mean, I'm sure finances sometimes, it's tough running a business.
Well, especially to buy it at first, too. You had to have all that money to buy it and then pick it up again from there.
Yeah. I mean, when I was younger, when my dad came, though, because he worked for Carlos, his name was Carlos Gustafaro, and his kids had no interest in the business. So Carlos actually sold it to him and held the loan for him. So he got kind of lucky that he did that for him. So he was lucky that happened for him. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he was making any money, but he had that opportunity that he was able to have that loan through the man, and, he got lucky.
Well, I don't think it's luck. I just think opportunities present themselves.
Yeah.
And you got to be awake in order to see them.
Exactly. And his mother, and then my mother was working there, and she helped. And he told her, when he saw her, he's like, I'm going to marry you. He just knew. And he told her, he's like, learn whatever you can. And he's like, we're going to get married someday. Weird, right? He just met her and knew. And she was like, okay. And learned whatever she could from the business and then saved. She was a really good saver. My mother was a really good saver. Because even when I worked there, I'm like, can I have my pay? She's like, well, what do you need? I'm like, what do you mean? What do I need? I need my money.
Well, there's a reason I know all that stuff. So I grew up around all Italians.
Yeah.
My wife is Italian, and her grandmother, Greenhorn, she was the money woman.
Mm-hmm.
Husband went out and worked. She took care of all the money.
All the money.
She made sure there was a budget. That's the way. Things are a little different now.
My grandmother never worked a day in her life, and my grandfather had to go to her for money.
I'm really wishing.
Yeah.
That's the one lesson I think I wish my wife's grandmother told her. I
In-
wish she would take care of the money. I don't want to deal with it no more.
In hindsight, me too.
Yeah. So, do your kids have any interest in the business?
I think that we feel that maybe they should all like get a job first, and then they could come back to the business so they could kind of see what the real world
The real
is
world's like, exactly.
And then
That's
if
interesting.
if they, listen, if any of them need a job, obviously they could all work in the family business. But I feel like they should kind of work in the real world and then come back. My son, he's, I think he feels like he wants to kind of go out on his own. So I don't know what he's going to do. And my daughter kind of, says that she doesn't know really what she wants to do yet. So I don't know.
But your kids are both going to college, so it's
Yeah.
not like they're getting out of high school and saying, "Here's your job, you're starting to work." So they're actually planning for their future as it is.
Exactly. So it really would fall on them. If they wanted to, they can.
But that's a smart move because I've seen too many kids who came from well-off parents who didn't understand the value of a dollar because they were given everything, and they never knew. Like your father put in serious sweat equity. You and your sisters and your brother put in
We
serious
did.
sweat equity.
Serious.
And you want to try to give that value to them. And that's probably one of the greatest lessons you can teach your kids is hard work.
Yeah. My son would, like, I can tell you this, like, my son, when wrestling season was over before he left for college, he would come home and, like, my son really, like, he would go to 3 practices a day and, like, he spends hours
I think
at
the first time I
wrestling.
called you, you were at an event.
Yeah.
You were at a wrestling event.
He would come, was like, I got a job. I'm like, really? You got a job? Like, got a job, like, delivering pizza. Like, he's a little worker. He's a little hustler. My daughter would cry. Like, I'm like, really? You're crying? Like, you need a job? You're crying. Like, oh my God. But like him, he doesn't care. And he just texts me. He's like, I got an internship. I'm like, you got an internship? I'm
Not
like,
delivering pizzas.
no, he
Okay.
goes, I got an internship. And I'm like, oh, okay, good for you. Like, so, like, he's more of like a little bit of a hustler where my daughter's like, oh, like, it's just freshman year, like summer. Like, I don't need an internship yet. I'm like, oh, okay.
But it's good to give them that lesson because then if someday they were ever you're preparing them to take over the business. Because how many family businesses fail in the second or third generation because the kids are spoiled?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have a brand now
Yeah.
to protect. And that you're protecting your father and mother's legacy.
Exactly.
And I know that's a big responsibility on your shoulders.
It is.
Yeah, but I mean, now their kids are going to have to protect their parents' legacy and their grandparents' legacy.
How big of a responsibility is that to you?
It's a very big responsibility, it's very big. I mean, and I think it falls mostly on my brother's shoulders because he's kind of the leader of the
Well,
family.
he's the face of it.
He's the face of it, and he like is the leader of it, and like he makes he makes most of the decisions, and and it's a big responsibility on him, and I do feel bad for him most of the times, but. I know that he makes the right decision. So, I
You
mean,
just got to stop driving through Roseland.
exactly. That's all.
So the story.
Inside joke.
So I'm going to let everybody in on the story. So Mary and I have a connection.
Yes.
It's an odd connection, but it's a connection. So in 2007, my wife and I were planning our wedding, and we're watching TV shows on wedding cakes, and we're watching this show. It's TLC. We're just watching it, not thinking anything of it. Wow, it's really nice cake, and getting ideas and things like that. Well, I'm working midnights, and I can tell you, right, I was on Eagle Rock Avenue, right in front of the Environmental Center. For those people who are local, know exactly where it is. I pull over a car, and I can't even remember what the violation was. And I get the license registration. I'm looking at the license. Nothing clicks, nothing. And it was the Cake Boss was brand new if it was out. I'm looking at the guy. I'm like, man, you look really familiar. Why do I know you? And he's like, he didn't say anything, and it clicked in my head. I'm like, I just watched you on TV. And he was almost embarrassed that I recognized him.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. That's how I was like, well, hey, listen, I didn't give him a ticket. But I was like, I said, just whatever it was, stop doing whatever you were doing. And but very nice, very generous. Didn't even though he was on TV, he didn't play the big shot.
Yeah.
But it was so strange to feel like he just felt like he was embarrassed. That's what I got from him. Is that how he is?
He really, really is a good guy. Like if he sees like someone that needs something, he's the type of guy like that would pull over. Like if he sees a homeless person, like he gives money. Like he really feels bad for people. Like if you tell him something, he is like, oh my God, like I can't believe it.
So,
Like
buddy, I'm really sorry I pulled you over. I'm so sorry.
he really is like genuinely like a good person. He's very generous. He's a good dad. He's a good husband. He's a good brother. Like if I call him, he's like, like how are the kids doing? Like is everything all right? Like
But I get that from everybody on the show.
yeah.
All down the line, like genuinely good people. And I know, listen, it's reality TV. I get I've spoken to enough people on reality TV to know that reality TV is not exactly reality.
Some of it, yeah, isn't.
Yeah.
I got you.
You have second takes and third takes. Let's redo that.
Like you mess up a cannoli, you get to go do it again. But then how the heck did you get approached to do Cake Boss?
Well, I think that what had happened was he was doing a lot of those challenges like where you like
Yeah, like on the Food Network.
yeah,
challenges.
the Food Network challenges, and they saw him on that, and the producer was like, wow, they're like, he's really good, like they liked him, and then like they would come and sit down in the bakery, and like they would listen to like me and my sisters, and we didn't know who they were because we had like 4 little tables in the bakery, and we would be like telling my one sister, because my one sister Grace really doesn't cook like at all, so she'd be like,
So now she's got 3 sisters
Yeah.
and a brother that cook. Why should she cook?
exactly. So she'd be like ordering something like from Impastos to take home for dinner. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, and she's like, oh, I'm like ordering something for dinner. I'm like, oh my God, like I'll cook something for you. Like it's terrible. And like we would be like literally, she'd be like, hang up the phone. I'm like, oh, like I'd be on the phone with like my personal shopper, and she'd be like, hang up, like, So we'd be like arguing, and then like the producer would like introduce himself. I'm like, oh my God. And then like Buddy came, and he's like, someone sent in a tape of me, like, from one of the challenges, and blah blah blah, and they want to do a show. And I'm like, are you crazy? I'm like, they're gonna do a show on us? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't think, we're interesting. And he was like, oh, yous are interesting, all right. So like, that's how it kind of came about.
But it's family conflict, and where you saw family conflict play really well on TV was, I think one of the first ones was American Chopper.
Yeah.
So if you ever watched American Chopper, what they built beautiful bikes just like you make beautiful cakes, but it was the family dynamic that really
Orange County Choppers. It was.
Was it Orange County?
Yeah,
Well, Orange County Choppers was a shop, but it's that family dynamic is what's interesting to people. And there are a million bakeries in the world that make gorgeous cakes.
Yeah.
But your bakery, for some reason, elevated. Why? I know why. Because of the family dynamic inside. Yeah. That family value that your parents instilled in you and your siblings, that's the draw.
And a lot of people like that had those shows, they all broke up. Yeah. Like John and Kate,
John and Kate plus 8, yeah.
They broke up. Like, those little people, they broke up. Like
she had the original Karen hair.
Like they all broke up. Like we're still together. Like, and nothing would separate us. Like
I think a lot of that comes from because portions of their life weren't real. Yeah. Like that's where reality TV becomes fiction. Do you understand what I'm saying? What you're telling me is your reality TV is more real.
Yeah, like we're not gonna break. Like, and listen, we're just doing cakes and like we're together. And listen, do we argue sometimes? Of course we argue about like stupid things or whatever. But we're not gonna do something to each other that's gonna break us up. We're a close knit family.
But see, I think what really breaks all those people up is they say fame changes everybody. But just from what you're saying about your family, it doesn't seem like anybody changed at all.
Yeah, we didn't change with any of that. Like we don't care. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like who, like you're on TV. Okay, you're on TV. Who cares? You know what I'm saying? It didn't.
But what changed? I imagine everything changed after that show came out and was a hit.
The business changed a lot. That was what had changed,
And taking pictures and signing autographs when you need to make cannolis.
Exactly.
I remember my sister-in-law who grew up in Hoboken. she comes and she knew Carlo's Bakery from growing up, and it was a great neighborhood bakery.
Yes.
And then I remember she brought a cake from Carlo's,
Uh-huh.
the one on Washington
Yes.
Street, and I was like, "How the heck did you get this?" Like, I didn't even know it was a real place. I thought it was a fictional show. I'm a South Jersey kid, so I thought it was a fictional show, but no, it's the real deal. So it's been around and it's been a staple now. But like, when did you first realize that everything changed?
I think when the show became a success, when we thought, when I knew that the show became a success, then it was like, oh my God.
Was there a point, like an exact point, where it's like this just got big?
Yeah. What was your holy cow moment?
Well, to me, I was like, when you're on Oprah, to me, that was my point. I'm like, then I'll feel like you're like, this big star or whatever. And then he had a chance to be on Oprah, and I was like, oh my God, like, and then he took me on Oprah with him. And then he even said it. He's like, my sister told me, and then like, they shined the light, and I was crying hysterical, like my big moment on Oprah. And I was like I was crying hysterical. I'm like, oh my God. And that's all you saw. And like, he brought me and all my sisters and my mother. We were all on Oprah crying. Like, it was just like terrible. Like, obviously it was beautiful, but it was just like this big moment. And he got to make a cake for Oprah. And she was so nice because like we were in the back and then we took a picture with her. And it was just like, that was the moment I'm like, oh my God, like my brother's like,
this is it.
This is it. Like my brother really made it because I'm here on the Oprah Winfrey. I'm on Oprah. I'm here on Oprah. And like I've designed some cakes for like these famous people. Like I made cakes for like who'd I make cakes for? I made cakes for like the Olsen twins. I made cakes for like Chris Rock's kid. We'd make cakes for Justin Bieber. Taylor Swift, Selena Gomez. Like I've designed cakes for like all these different celebrities, And
Oprah, the biggest one you ever met.
Well, you shook hands with you had a picture with a billionaire.
Yeah, I was on there. I was next to her, and we've made cakes for so many people. But the two most famous people that I made cakes for that I'm like dear and friendly with, and they're like family to me, was Mariano Rivera, and I'm still to this day.
Oh no, you're a Yankees fan.
Go ahead.
Oh my God.
No, but my family are Met fans.
Okay.
My husband and son are Met fans, but
that's a little worse, but I'm a Philly fan. So.
Okay. And Tim McGraw and his mother.
Really?
Oh, nice.
So, okay. All right. So there's a nice segue.
And his mother.
At least his father was Tug McGraw. Great pitcher for the Phillies. I can get on board with that.
Love Betty and Tim McGraw. And Faith is beautiful.
She's
wonderful.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
I mean,
gorgeous.
She's just all class.
Drop dead.
All class.
Drop dead. Gorgeous. And Tim is very handsome in person.
You ever make
and
a cake
his
for
mother
Jennifer?
and sisters, the whole family. His daughters their daughters are gorgeous. The whole family. So like I'm like family with them.
You ever make a cake for Jennifer Aniston?
Did I ever make a cake?
He's trying to find a backdoor.
If you do, call me. I'll help you design it.
No, I haven't.
You
I
pop
don't
out
know
of it?
if the bakery ever did, but no, me personally, no, I haven't.
He wants to pop out of the cake. Okay, different type of cake.
Yeah.
Different type.
Listen, it doesn't have to be a tall cake. I'm only 5'9".
But Tim McGraw, I remember when it came out because he didn't know Tug McGraw was his father.
Yeah,
I don't know if you're aware of who his father was.
Yeah, I do know.
he pitched the last pitch in the 1980
I know
World
how he
Series.
found out. He found his birth certificate.
Yeah, and when you put those two together, you're like, how did you not know? They look spitting image of each other. I think Tug had more hair, but wow, that's I don't know.
It's got to be cool.
I don't know if I could handle that. Like
It puts a lot of pressure on you, though.
Yeah,
to design a cake for all these big people. Like, what if the cake doesn't come out right? What if they're mad, or what if?
Well, I don't even. I have no control because I don't make the cakes.
But you designed it, right?
Yeah, and then to go in the back and be like, that's like when you're envisioning something in your head and you're not the ones with the hands on the cake. It's very hard because like what you're seeing. But listen, my brother like is very talented, and there's been many times where I'd be doing a constellation, then like I'd run in and like if he wasn't filming at the time or because I was there doing that, I'd be like, all right, buddy. But his envision is even, I would say, better than mine because, and be like,
I've seen that a lot on the show where he'll change something like
and
midstream.
I would say to him, what are you thinking with this and that? And, and then he'd be like, well, we could do this because like, I don't know like what possible physically could be done. Like he's the one that's making it and his team. Well, can you do this? Oh yeah. Well, we could do this. Like, this is for this one and this is for that. And this is, and then he could, move things around.
So you're the creative. So
she's not the fondant queen.
No, I couldn't. If I touched the fondant, it would melt. Like I would eat the fondant. That's what I'd be doing. I'd be passing and I'd eat the fondant.
The finger and a cake. Like,
yeah.
I actually love watching them making it because imagination becomes reality when it comes to that. Your imagination, what you can dream,